May 9, 1941. Somewhere in the North Atlantic, a German submarine prowls beneath the surface. WW110. She's armed with 14 torpedoes and something far more dangerous, one of Germany's most closely guarded secrets, the Enigma cipher machine. Her mission? Simple enough. Hunt down convoy OB318, sink whatever she can, and disappear back into the depths. But today, nothing goes according to plan. When British escorts spot the U-boat and counterattack, the ocean erupts into chaos. Depth charges from HMS Bulldog and Broadway hammer the waters, shaking the submarine like a toy in a child's fist. 27-year-old commander, Captain Lieutenant Fritz Julius Lemp, fights desperately for control. But the hull's groaning under the pressure and the rudders jammed solid. Lemp makes the call no U-boat captain wants to make. Surface and fight. The submarine breaks through the waves into blinding daylight. Her deck gun swings toward the oncoming destroyer, but Bulldog's already charging in with every gun blazing. Shells tear into the conning tower. Smoke and seawater pour inside. Lemp shouts the order every sailor dreads. Alle Mann raus. Abandon ship. The crew pours out onto the deck and into the freezing Atlantic. Captain Baker Creswell, watching from Bulldog's bridge, makes a decision no destroyer captain has ever risked before. He's going to board her. At 12:25, as WW110 wallows half submerged, a small whaleboat slaps against her hull. The boarding party climbs aboard, led by Lieutenant David Baum, a 20-year-old officer armed with nothing but a pistol and a flashlight. He drops down through the open hatch into the submarine's belly. Inside, the air reeks of diesel fuel and seawater. Emergency lights still flicker weakly. Papers float across the control room like dead leaves. Baum and his men spread out, moving fast. They have no idea that in the next 2 minutes they're about to find the single most valuable piece of intelligence in the entire war. On the radio table sits a compact grey box, roughly the size of a typewriter. 3 rotors, black keys, a plugboard. The label reads Enigma. Next to it lie codebooks, cipher keys, weather tables, all soaked through but still legible. Baum stares at them, and something in his gut tells him these must be what every intelligence officer in London has been praying for since 1939. He calls up through the hatch, "We've got something." By 12:45, WW110 slips beneath the surface. Her scuttling charges go off too late to destroy the evidence. The Royal Navy tows their prize back to Iceland under the strictest secrecy imaginable. The operation gets a code name, Primrose. No one outside the highest circles of British naval intelligence is told what happened. Even the sailors who risked their lives boarding the submarine are sworn to silence. They think they've captured a U-boat. They have no idea they've just captured the key to Germany's entire war at sea. For now, only 2 men in London understand the full magnitude of what's just occurred. Admiral John Godfrey, Director of Naval Intelligence, and his civilian counterpart at Bletchley Park, Commander Alistair Denniston. When they open the crates from Bulldog and see the Enigma machine still intact, rotors still in place, both men realise the same truth in the same instant. Germany has just lost its invisibility cloak. May 13th, 1941. 4 days after the capture. The crates from HMS Bulldog arrive at Bletchley Park under armed escort. The men unloading them don't know what they're carrying, only that it's classified most secret. Inside Hut 8, a mathematician named Alan Turing watches as the lids are pried open. Rainwater drips from the tarps, soaking through the paper. And there it is, the Enigma, the same machine that's made the German Navy virtually invincible for 2 straight years. At first glance, the device looks almost ordinary. A wooden box with metal components, keys arranged like a standard typewriter. But Turing and his small team, Gordon Welchman, Hugh Alexander, Joan Clark, they know better. Every single one of Germany's U-boats, surface raiders and supply ships uses an Enigma machine to encrypt their radio transmissions. Each message gets scrambled by 3 rotating rotors and a plugboard, creating 150 quintillion possible combinations. The settings change every day at midnight. Even a single error makes the message completely unreadable. Until now, British codebreakers have been flying blind. Naval Enigma, the version the Kriegsmarine uses, is far more complex than anything the Army or Air Force operates. The Germans added an extra rotor, the so-called fourth wheel, and tightened their procedures so much that even when the British intercept messages, they can't solve them in time to save convoys. At best, Bletchley can make educated guesses. At worst, they watch helplessly as U-boats tear Allied shipping to shreds in the mid-Atlantic. But now, everything changes. The boarding party from Bulldog didn't just capture an Enigma machine. They captured the current cipher keys, the actual code books used to set the rotors and plugboard each day. Each page corresponds to one day in May 1941. May 9th, 10th, 11th, all still valid. For this brief window, the Allies can finally see through the fog of war. Denniston orders an immediate lockdown. The discovery is so sensitive that even Prime Minister Churchill isn't told until they can prove the results. The Germans must never learn their machine was taken. If they find out, they'll change the entire system overnight, and all this work will be for nothing. The operation gets a new code name, Ultra. That night, under blackout, curtains, Turing's team begins decoding their first transmissions. The intercepts come from Y stations, secret radio posts scattered along the British coast that vacuum up enemy signals 24 hours a day. Dozens of messages have been piling up for weeks, nothing but unreadable gibberish. With the U-110 codebooks open on the table, they start testing combinations, rotor order, ring settings, plugboard pairs. The machine clacks away, lamps flickering. Then, at 2:37 in the morning, they get their breakthrough. One of the intercepts resolves into plain German text. U-52 reports success in grid AE 2867. 2 ships sunk, 10,000 tons. For the first time, they're reading Admiral Donitz's words as he writes them. The room falls silent. Everyone understands what just happened. Naval Enigma has been breached. Temporarily, sure, but it's enough to unlock the enemy's eyes and ears. Over the next 48 hours, decrypted traffic reveals U-boat positions, patrol lines, refueling schedules. Dozens of Wolfpack locations get mapped on a large chart in Hut 8. Each red pin represents a U-boat that believes itself invisible. To the British, they're now targets. But secrecy is everything. Orders go out to the Admiralty immediately. You may only act on ultra-intelligence when it cannot possibly betray the source. Convoys are quietly rerouted, zigzagging through gaps in the Wolfpack grids, as if by pure chance. Admirals feign intuition. Ship captains are told nothing. In a war where knowledge equals survival, this single machine, this single accident, has given the Allies something no radar, sonar or aircraft ever could. Foreknowledge? Turing writes in his journal that night, "We can read their heart." He's right. For the first time since the Battle of the Atlantic began, the U-boats aren't the hunters anymore. They're the hunted, and not one of them knows it. June 1941. The North Atlantic. Convoy HX 128 ploughs west through rough seas, 40 merchant ships in column, escorted by destroyers HMS Broadway and Obrietta. Days earlier, German Admiral Karl Dönitz ordered a Wolfpack of 6 U-boats to intercept it. His message, radioed in Enigma code, was confident. Proceed to grid AM52. Intercept convoy by dawn. What Dönitz didn't know, what no one in the Kriegsmarine knew, was that British intelligence had already read his message before the U-boats even reached their patrol line. At Bletchley Park, Turing's team had cracked the naval Enigma keys from U-110's captured codebooks. They were working around the clock now, building their first mechanical decoders, electromechanical bombs, that could run thousands of rotor combinations every minute. With the May and early June key settings recovered from those water-damaged pages, they could read encrypted signals in near real time. The U-boat fleet, once invisible, now appears on British plotting boards like pieces on a chessboard. The British call this newfound sight Ultra. Fewer than 100 people in all of Britain even know what that word means. Each day, an innocuous envelope marked Most Secret Source Ultra arrives at the Admiralty's submarine tracking room in London. Inside are summaries of decrypted messages, positions, orders, fuel shortages, even weather reports transmitted between German vessels. The officers reading them can barely believe what they're seeing. On June 10th, Bletchley intercepts Dönitz's instructions for the HX 128 ambush. Within hours, a single indirect order goes out from the Admiralty to the convoy. Alter course northwest 40 miles, maintain speed. That's all? No explanation. No panic. To the escorts, it looks like routine navigation. To Dönitz's U-boats, it's as if the convoy vanished into thin air. 2 days later, 6 U-boats surface into an empty ocean. The German captains send frantic signals back to Lorient. No contact. Suspect convoy delayed or diverted. At Bletchley, the decrypts come through clear as crystal. Turing's colleague, Hugh Alexander, simply smiles. The U-boats are stabbing at ghosts. But the Germans are starting to notice a pattern. In July, after 3 failed convoy interceptions, Dönitz suspects British intelligence has somehow improved their reconnaissance. He blames aircraft, long-range patrols from Iceland, maybe secret radar aboard ships. Not once does he imagine that his own radio orders are being read before his captains can even receive them. To preserve that illusion, the Admiralty plays a dangerous double game. They have to act on Ultra without revealing it exists. When U-boats shift hunting grounds, the Royal Navy stages mock sightings to justify their sudden course changes. Reconnaissance planes are ordered to fly over the same grids already exposed by decrypts, giving Dönitz a plausible reason for why the Allies seem so damn lucky. The British even stage small skirmishes, depth charge attacks far from actual convoys, to keep the Germans confident their encryption remains unbroken. Inside Bletchley Park, Turing's hut runs on tea, cigarettes, and pure adrenaline. Every midnight, the Germans reset Enigma's rotors and plugboard connections. That means the British have exactly 24 hours to break each new key before the next day's traffic becomes unreadable. They're racing against the clock, the steady clatter of the bombs echoing through the night. When a message decrypts successfully, a small bell rings and a clerk shouts, "Stop!" because that one single line of German text could save thousands of tons of Allied shipping. By August, the statistics tell the story. Allied losses in the Atlantic have fallen by nearly 40%. Convoys are slipping through U-boat patrol lines untouched. Destroyers begin intercepting U-boats mid-transmission, ambushing them at coordinates the Germans believed were secret. To British sailors, it seems miraculous. To German crews, it feels cursed. Captain Joe Baker Creswell, the man who ordered the boarding of U-110, receives a private note from Naval Intelligence. Your prize continues to yield the richest fruits. He never learns the details, only that something aboard that U-boat changed the course of the war. In Berlin, Dönitz grows desperate. He rotates cipher officers, changes procedure sheets, even suspects there are spies within the Kriegsmarine. None of it matters. The Enigma itself is perfect. The human routines around it aren't. Every time a radio operator reuses a phrase or transmits weather data using predictable words, Turing's team pounces. They call these repetitions cribs. Each crib gives them a foothold, another pattern to feed into the bombs. The Germans, thinking their machine is mathematically unbreakable, keep using it with the same careless confidence. By the end of 1941, the Royal Navy isn't reacting to the U-boats anymore. they're anticipating them, rerouting convoys days before danger appears. The hunters have become the hunted. The men of U-110, now prisoners of war in Scotland, have no idea that the papers they left behind are doing more damage to the Reich than any torpedo they ever fired. And in the quiet halls of Bletchley Park, Alan Turing marks each victory with a single note on the wall map. Visibility, excellent. Winter, 1941. The Atlantic is at its worst. Iron grey seas, sub-zero winds, and waves big enough to bury a destroyer whole. For most of the war, this season favoured the Germans. U-boats could slip through the heavy seas, unseen by aircraft, shielded by weather that grounded reconnaissance. But now, the advantage is gone. Britain can see them, even in the dark, even in the storm. The Enigma intelligence from U-110 has evolved into something alive, an operational weapon called Ultra. Each morning, the Admiralty's tracking room at Derby House in Liverpool comes alive before dawn. Charts of the Atlantic cover every wall, pins marking known U-boat positions. Around them, officers whisper in coded language. No one ever says Enigma. The source of their knowledge is only ever described as special intelligence. When Dönitz moves a wolf pack, the pins move first, sometimes days before the submarines themselves. Convoy routes bend in strange arcs, apparently random, but calculated to thread through gaps invisible to anyone except those holding ultra decrypts. Even the captains commanding the convoys don't know why their courses change. Orders come sealed and unexplainable. Alter heading 26 degrees west by midnight. Maintain radio silence. In late November, a test comes that will prove whether Ultra can truly turn the tide. The Germans have dispatched Wolfpack Maud Brenner, 15 U-boats under direct command from Dönitz's headquarters at Kerneville. Their target, convoy HX-142, 50 ships loaded with oil, munitions and grain bound for Liverpool. To Dönitz, it's the perfect strike. Thick fog, winter seas, Allied escorts spread thin. His message to the Wolfpack, encrypted in Enigma, orders them to form a line across grid B64. He believes the British have no idea. They do. At Bletchley Park, the message comes through at 5:40 on November 23rd. Within 3 hours, analysts at Hut 8 have it decrypted and on Commander Edward Travis's desk. 15 U-boats, line B64, intercept HX-140. By dawn the next day, British naval intelligence has already acted. A new route is drawn for the convoy, a subtle bend southward, just 50 miles, enough to slide past the waiting U-boats like a ghost. When Wolfpack Maud Brenner rises to periscope depth on November 25th, their scopes cut through fog and find nothing. No wakes, no silhouettes, no prey. For 48 hours they search an empty ocean. In Lorient, Dönitz explodes in frustration. His staff blames faulty weather data. Others suspect Allied radar. But Dönitz refuses to believe Enigma could be broken. Our machine is mathematically unassailable, he tells his officers. He's right about the mathematics and dead wrong about everything else. Enigma itself is secure. The procedures, the human habits, those are not. Meanwhile, Ultra's reach extends beyond the Atlantic. Messages between Berlin and Rome, also using modified Enigma, are intercepted and partially decrypted. By January 1942, Allied command has accurate knowledge of Axis shipping routes in the Mediterranean. British submarines begin appearing exactly where German convoys to North Africa are scheduled to sail. The Africa Corps' supplies start to shrink. Still, the greatest effect remains at sea. In February, convoy SC-67 crosses from Halifax to Liverpool. The Germans know it exists. Intercepts reveal they have orders to ambush, but every time they try, the convoy's already gone. Depth charges rain down on their coordinates instead. Captain Peter Gretton of HMS Walker, completely unaware of Ultra's existence, later writes, "Our luck that winter bordered on the supernatural. It wasn't luck. Every success comes from messages decrypted at Bletchley Park, where Turing and his exhausted staff still race against those midnight rotor changes. The British understand the fragile nature of their gift. When U-boats change Enigma settings or lose codebooks at sea, the window of visibility slams shut. For weeks, Allied ships sail blind again until a fresh capture or a slip in German discipline reopens the door. That means every Enigma recovery, every scrap of code sheet, every manual, every captured rotor is absolutely priceless. And in March 1942, the British get another one. HMS Petard, after depth charging U-559 in the Mediterranean, sends 2 sailors, Lieutenant Tony Fasson and able seaman Colin Grazier, into the flooding submarine to recover documents. Both men drown, clutching the papers that will break another Enigma variant wide open. The cost is paid in blood, but the effect is the same. Each capture gives Bletchley new life. Every new key means more weeks of clarity, more convoys saved, more U-boats sunk. By spring 1942, British escorts aren't merely evading the U-boats anymore, they're hunting them. At Derby House, the map begins to shift. The sea, once black with enemy contact reports, starts to lighten. Each red pin marking a U-boat is matched by a small black cross. Destroyed, sunk, confirmed. The Allies aren't winning yet, but for the first time, they're not losing either. In Berlin, Dönitz stares at his loss reports. 85 submarines gone since May 1941. He writes in his diary, "The enemy seems to know our intentions before we do." He isn't wrong. Every order he sends, every grid coordinate, every plea for reinforcements, London is already reading it. Spring 1943. The Battle of the Atlantic reaches its climax. For 3 years, German U-boats have terrorized the convoys, over 20 million tons of Allied shipping sent to the bottom. Winston Churchill will later admit, "The only thing that ever really frightened me during the war was the U-boat peril." But now, for the first time, the hunters are being hunted. And the change begins not with ships or planes, but with mathematics, radio waves, and the quiet genius of the people inside Bletchley Park. The Enigma breakthrough from U-110 gave Britain a 2-year head start. Each time the Germans modified their machine, adding rotors, changing plugboard patterns. Turing's team built faster, smarter machines to match them. The British bombs, rows of clicking rotors powered by electric motors, now fill entire halls. Operators, mostly young women from the Women's Royal Naval Service, work 12-hour shifts, feeding intercepts, logging results, resetting configurations when midnight strikes. By March 1943, Bletchley is reading roughly 80% of all naval traffic within hours of transmission. The result is devastating. German wolf packs assembling to intercept convoys are being intercepted themselves. Destroyers and long-range Liberator bombers begin appearing exactly where Dönitz's U-boats surface to refuel. The advantage of surprise, once entirely German, is gone. The battle that proves it comes in May 1943. Convoy ONS-5, 42 merchant ships escorted by destroyers and corvettes, sails from Liverpool to Halifax. Dönitz, determined to reverse the tide, throws everything he has at them. Over 40 U-boats form a massive patrol line, codenamed Gruppe Fink, the largest wolf pack ever assembled. His encrypted order reads, "Concentrate for decisive blow." Within 12 hours, Bletchley decrypts it. The Admiralty's submarine tracking room reroutes ONS-5 slightly north, only 60 miles, a minor deviation invisible to the Germans. The convoy steams straight through the one gap the Wolfpack hasn't covered. When the U-boats finally make contact, their prey has already passed. But something new happens. Instead of evading, the escorts turn toward the hunters. Guided by ultra-intelligence and HFDF direction finding, the destroyers launch coordinated attacks. U-638, U-531, U-125, all destroyed in a single night. For 3 years, Allied ships endured being slaughtered in darkness. Now, for the first time, the darkness belongs to them. By the end of May, 41 U-boats are sunk across the North Atlantic. Dönitz, desperate, orders a temporary withdrawal. The situation in the Atlantic is intolerable, losses unbearable. At Bletchley, Turing barely looks up from his desk when the message is decrypted. "That's it," he says simply. "They're finished." But the victory comes at a cost: absolute secrecy. Every success of Ultra depends on the Germans never realizing their codes are broken. When Allied forces act on decrypted intelligence, they disguise it behind other sources: fake reconnaissance, coincidental sightings, radar sweeps staged after the fact. Admiralty officers call this deception the Ultra Mask. Even as the tide turns, the capture of U-110 remains one of Britain's most closely held secrets. The sailors who boarded her still don't know what they did. Lieutenant David Baum, the young officer who first entered the submarine, spends the rest of the war under orders never to speak of it. His official report refers to the Enigma machine only as an electrical ciphering device of enemy design. In Berlin, Dönitz continues searching for explanations. He orders new signal procedures, rotating ciphers more frequently. He even blames Allied radar and long-range aircraft. Never once does he suspect that his own Enigma, his unbreakable marvel, is the traitor in his fleet. The British understand the irony perfectly. At Bletchley Park, a blackboard above the decoding tables carries a single line of chalk that never changes. "Don't let them know we know." By summer, ultra-intelligence reaches every Allied theatre. In North Africa, convoy routes carrying supplies to Rommel are intercepted weeks before departure. In the Mediterranean, British submarines position themselves along the exact bearings of Axis resupply ships, many carrying fuel for the Africa Corps. Every time one sinks, Turing's machines hum quietly behind the victory. At sea, the statistics speak louder than any message. In 1941, Allied shipping losses averaged 300,000 tonnes per month. In 1943, that number drops below 60,000. By early 1944, the Allies are sinking U-boats faster than Germany can build them. The Atlantic, once the Reich's hunting ground, is now a graveyard of its own submarines. From the icy waters south of Greenland to the Mediterranean coast of Crete, the message is the same. Germany has lost control of the sea without ever realizing how. Every victory, every saved convoy, every ship that reaches port owes its existence to one single decision on May 9, 1941, when a U-boat captain hesitated to blow his own ship apart. Fritz Julius Lemp, commander of U-110, died that day in the Atlantic, believing his scuttling charges had destroyed everything. They hadn't. His death sealed the one mistake that would outlive him and help end the empire he served. May 1945. Flensburg, northern Germany. Admiral Karl Dönitz, now Führer of the collapsing Reich, signs the unconditional surrender of his forces. Outside, the harbour lies filled with the ghosts of the Kriegsmarine, half-sunk destroyers, abandoned U-boats, scuttled to avoid capture. The empire of the Atlantic, once ruled from his desk in Lorient, is dead. But it didn't die in 1945. It died 4 years earlier on the deck of a drifting submarine, U-110. The story of that capture remains classified until long after the war ends. Not even most Allied admirals know the truth. When the first reports of victory reach Washington and London, politicians praise radar, aircraft and shipbuilding. No one mentions Enigma. Churchill himself writes in a secret memo, "Ultra must never be revealed. Its existence was worth every life we saved, and it must remain hidden." Bletchley Park, by then the beating heart of Allied intelligence, dismantles its machinery. The bombs are disassembled and buried under scrap orders. The decoding huts fall silent for the first time in 5 years. Alan Turing, exhausted and uncelebrated, returns to Cambridge with no medals and no public recognition. Only a handful of officers at the Admiralty and a few American codebreakers at Arlington Hall know what he and his colleagues achieved, but the numbers speak louder than secrecy ever could. Between 1941 and 1945, ultra-intelligence shortens the war in Europe by an estimated 2 years. Nearly 25,000 merchant ships survived the Atlantic crossing because of convoy reroutes ordered from Enigma decrypts. More than 500 U-boats are hunted and destroyed, often within days of leaving port. And most crucially, the entire strategy of the Third Reich, its fuel shipments, troop movements, even its armoured offensives, are all anticipated weeks in advance. In early 1944, when Rommel prepares for the Allied invasion of France, Ultra intercepts nearly every German transmission about troop deployments along the Channel. When D-Day comes on June 6th, the Allies already know which divisions will respond, where they'll move, and how fast. Hitler's own orders, encrypted through Enigma, are read in London before they reach his field commanders. Eisenhower later writes privately, "Without Ultra, Normandy might have failed." Meanwhile, in the North Atlantic, the once terrifying U-boat fleet is being hunted to extinction. The British call it Black May, May 1943, when 41 submarines vanish beneath the waves in a single month. The German Navy never recovers. For Dönitz, the realization comes too late. He writes in his diary, "It is as if the enemy knows every move I make." He's right. The enemy did know every movement, every coded order, every attempt at deception, all because of one U-boat that failed to sink fast enough. The moment on May 9th, 1941, plays back in slow motion in every intelligence archive after the war. Depth charges explode, U-110 surfaces, wounded but alive. Commander Fritz Julius Lemp orders abandoned ship, believing British destroyers will open fire and finish the job. He dives into the sea, expecting his scuttling charges to blow within seconds. They don't. HMS Bulldog closes in. Lieutenant David Baum boards through the forward hatch. He and his men move fast, snatching codebooks, maps, and a compact 3-rotor machine with a black bakelite housing. They barely escape before the sub sinks. For 7 months afterward, the capture remains one of Britain's most tightly guarded secrets. Even Churchill refuses to tell Roosevelt until 1942. If the Germans learned the Allies had Enigma, the war's greatest weapon would be lost overnight. But they never did. The deception held until the end. When Allied intelligence analysts compiled their final wartime assessments in June 1945, one figure stands out. German shipping losses from 1941 onward don't align with convoy strength or radar coverage. The analysts mark the discrepancy with a single word: ultra. It's the proof that information, not firepower, decided the outcome of the Atlantic. In the years that follow, Bletchley's veterans disperse. Some become teachers, some civil servants, some mathematicians at new computing laboratories, quietly funded by the government. The work they did, rotor analysis, decryption algorithms, statistical modelling, becomes the foundation of modern computer science. Alan Turing's bombs are dismantled, but their principles live on in every circuit board built after the war. The age of computation begins with the hum of those wartime machines. UB-110 herself rests on the seafloor 280 miles south of Iceland, a steel tomb half buried in sand. The sea has claimed her, but her shadow lingers in every code-breaking office and naval command centre built since. When the story is finally declassified in 1974, 33 years after the capture, the public reaction borders on disbelief. Newspapers call it the secret that won the war. Survivors from the Royal Navy's 3rd Escort Group read their names in print for the first time. Lieutenant Baum, now a retired officer living in Devon, gives a single, modest interview. "We were ordered to take whatever we could find. I didn't know what it was. only that the Admiralty seemed very pleased. Pleased is an understatement. The artefacts from that boarding, the Enigma machine, the cipher tables, the weather reports, are now displayed at the Bletchley Park Museum, encased in glass. They look ordinary, small, mechanical, silent. Yet each key, each page, each cog helped turn the largest war in history. Historians estimate that Ultra saved between 14 and 21 million lives, Allied and Axis alike, by shortening the conflict. What began as an accident, a failed scuttling on a cold morning in May 1941, ended with the collapse of the most technologically advanced military machine on Earth. In retrospect, it's astonishing how fragile the turning points of history can be. A jam detonator, a few seconds of hesitation, a boarding party acting on instinct. From that chain of chance came the fall of Germany's Atlantic supremacy, the protection of Britain's lifeline, and the birth of the modern intelligence age. The German U-boats once called the Atlantic their grey wolves sea. By 1945, the wolves were gone, hunted, outsmarted, undone by their own cipher. The war for control of the Atlantic wasn't won by guns, bombs, or battleships. It was won by silence, by the click of rotors inside a wooden hut in Buckinghamshire, by a message decrypted before dawn, by the ghost of a submarine whose captain never knew that when he dove beneath the waves, he had just handed his enemies the key to Germany's defeat.